There we are then.
$100 an hour.
Okay, do you, you're a professional. Yeah, these, lights we have make it very difficult to see. Yeah, it's actually extreme right now. So we're just. Yeah. Everett is a great one.
Sorry, isn't it Virginia?
Or are you gonna lay down like that?
Yeah,
I won't.
still don't
Much.
understand.
Yeah, I was driving around here again early.
What song would you recommend?
Maybe, yeah. No, that's the old one, so Kathy Hopper didn't give us any of the, you know, the front end pages, so.
It would have our new logo.
Yeah. I think it's easy department of education out here.
Oh, yeah.
Jump into that.
Hey, how are you?
We're just service providers.
No problem.
Oh, he's back here. Okay, this, I haven't had to do one. And I haven't missed. Those were typically.
We're about 1 minute out, folks. So we're on time. Anybody need a white balance or anything like that? I'm good. Wouldn't hurt. All right.
And while we're at it, and I know that you are very.
Need a
acquainted with
a
this,
radio white balance?
I need a audio white balance.
An audio white balance? White noise? Sorry.
You know what to do.
Hi.
Yeah, just need a level check here.
Okay.
I'll show
Hi,
you.
I'm here to say wonderful things about wonderful people to all you wonderful journalists. It's a wonderful, beautiful day. Do you have a level?
That looks good to me.
Okay. I said we'll start in a minute, but I see a couple of shooters need to set up, so we'll give you a moment.
We'll stop.
Gentleman in the green, do you need a white? Sorry, I don't know your name. I do see Linda Williams here, though, so we know it's a big story. Okay, we'll get started here in just a second.
And check 1, 2, check 1, 2, check 1, 2.
Oh, you guys can stand next to me if you want to. Well, thank you all for coming. We're talking today about school resource officers. As shown on the chart here, we increased the number of school resource officers from 190 to 301, almost doubling. And as you know, it's been a big priority for me to get policemen into the schools so this, to keep the students safe, which is the number one priority, but also they teach courses on law to the kids. They get to know the kids get a better attitude. They see the policemen as people they can trust rather than as enemies. And so it's a program that I've believed in since I first served, starting in 2003. And I made it a big priority, and happily we were able to almost double the number to 301 police officers. A problem occurred though, and that is our state has a shortage of police officers, just as we have a shortage of teachers and we have a shortage of nurses. And our career technical education department is working hard to try to prepare students for those occupations, to try to help solve those shortages. But in the meantime, we have police chiefs who feel they can't spare officers because they're short-staffed, and they couldn't make enough officers available to fill all the positions that we had already funded. We granted the requests and they were funded, but they couldn't find a police officer to fill it. And that was quite a serious problem. And Mike Kirkenbach, who is, where are you, Mike? Why don't you stand with us? Mike is the head of school safety in the Department of Education, former assistant police chief of the city of Phoenix. Mike came up with a very creative solution. We contracted with Off-Duty Management. They are a company that handle when police officers want to work on their days off, or when they're not working for the police officers, when they want to work for other people, they arrange for those kinds of jobs. And so we've contracted with Off-Duty Management to have police officers available when they're not on duty. So if a police officer is not working one of the weekdays because he works on the weekend, he could be available to the school that day of the week. So the school might have 5 different police officers, one each different day, but they're covered for all the time. That is one of our policies, is we don't involve partial coverage, because the nightmare is that some maniac walks into a school and kills 20 kids, as has happened in other states and could happen here, and there's no one there to protect the kids. And so if we partially funded a school and they had a police officer part of the time, but not all the time, and the tragedy occurred when he wasn't there, that would be horrible. So we insist that there be coverage all the time the students are there. So they could have 5 different police officers, but there's one there each day. The money was already appropriated, so there's no new money involved for this. The money was appropriated by the legislature and was assigned by us to the schools, and that remains constant. Some officers may come from different parts of town. Phoenix has not agreed to have their police officers participate, so you may have a situation where a school in Phoenix has officers, for example, from Peoria or some other city. We hope that Phoenix police will change their mind. That's the situation right now. In any case, this will allow us to provide a safe environment for more students in our schools. And I wanted to say a word about the need for that. We've had the following instances of students coming to school with guns, which creates an extremely dangerous situation. A student at Bostrom High School in the Phoenix Union brought a gun to school. A student at Estrella Elementary School in the Kyrene District brought a gun to school. A student at Desert Ridge High in Mesa brought a gun to school. A student at Linda Abril Education Academy in Phoenix Union brought a gun to school. A student at Maryvale High School in Phoenix Union brought a gun to school. A student at North Hyatt, Phoenix Union, brought a gun to school. Those are all extremely dangerous situations. And if something tragic happened, it would be terrible if there wasn't somebody there to protect the students. So this is very important that we get police officers into these schools for which we've already made the awarded the money to do it. As many of you know, we have a bipartisan committee composed of both Republicans and Democrats from the legislature and from the relevant organizations. And so before going public with this, we met with the relevant subcommittee of that group so that they would know what we're doing and they were able to ask questions and so on prior to our making this public. I want to thank Mike Kirkenbach for coming up with a very creative solution to this important problem. That's great work that Mike has done. Mike, you want to say a few words, or have I covered it all? Covered, okay. So we have, Mike, all of us will be available for questions after those who want to say something do. We have John Croto, who's the superintendent. John, do you want to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent Horn. I'm just here to applaud the Arizona Department of Education for, like Superintendent Horn said, coming up with a creative solution to adding safety to our schools. As you know, safety is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing that we can provide in education. We all know that our students won't learn if they don't feel safe, and that goes along with our employees, our faculty, our staff, and we realize there's a shortage in the employment market. There are for teachers, there are for law enforcement, there are in many fields. And this is a creative way to bridge that gap and get us law enforcement on our campuses. So we are very appreciative of this solution. We think it's going to be a great solution until we can bridge that gap and find a way to get more SROs onto our campuses. So on behalf of the Dysart Unified School District, thank you for a creative solution. We appreciate that. And we are looking forward to having those off-duty officers on our campuses. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
John.
Croto, how do you spell your last name?
We'll take questions after others have spoken, then we'll take questions for everybody, huh? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, I just want to get to spelling.
I'm sorry, what?
Spelling.
Spelling, oh. Croto, C-R-O-T-O?
CROTEAU.
Sorry, I had it wrong. And then we have Troy Bales, the superintendent of Paradise Valley. Did you want to say a word?
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent Horn. I'd certainly like to echo what Mr. Croto said. With the staffing shortages, it is a difficult position to be in, and we know that our law enforcement agencies have the same challenges that we have, and we're excited that this creative opportunity has come along to give us that opportunity to fill these positions. In PV, we do have several positions that are vacant, and I'm looking forward to seeing these filled with some of these off-duty officers. It will certainly help our community and our students, staff feel safer. So thank you for this creative opportunity. We certainly want to thank the ADE and Superintendent Horn because they have responded to our requests. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. And then we have the president of ODM, Off-Duty Management, Brian Manley.
Thank you. Superintendent Horn, Chief Kirkenbach, sorry, you're always going to be Chief. Thank you all very much for the opportunity here today, and to Arizona, the trust that you're putting in our company at Off-Duty Management. This is the reason Off-Duty Management exists. This is what we do. We're doing this across the country for police departments, bringing in a system and services that make the use of off-duty police officers for security more efficient and more effective. While it's sad that we're having to do that in our schools today, what we will help the Arizona Department of Education do is run this program more efficiently and fill those jobs, as the superintendent stated, with those officers that are not working their regular shifts. Again, this allows us to do what we already do in Arizona across multiple jurisdictions with many agencies here that are already our partners. We're protecting those officers in that community while they're working those jobs. We now get to join with the Department of Education while we all work together to keep the children of Arizona safe. So my hat's off really to you for coming up with an innovative approach, something that we do, although we do it in a different avenue. You are found a way, and we will partner with you. And we very much look forward to this opportunity and growing this with you. So again, thank you for the trust you put in us. And we look forward to continuing our service here in Arizona to all of the children in these schools. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we open to questions for me or anybody else that's up here. Yes.
I have some questions. Can someone answer what is the difference between a school safety officer as opposed to a school resource officer?
Mike, you want to explain that?
So as the superintendent said, there's a shortage of officers across the state. I'll give Phoenix as an example. Phoenix at its peak had 3,388 filled sworn positions. As of last week, it's down to 2,561. So chiefs and sheriffs are faced with very difficult decisions. Where do they staff the limited resources they have? So a school resource officer is a fully dedicated full-time officer to a school. So if you think of a 40-hour week, whether it be 410s or 5/8s, that officer is dedicated to that school. Because of the shortage, what this allows us to do is take off-duty officers who don't have the same level of training as a school resource officer. School resource officer will get a minimum of 40 hours of training. Our school safety officers will get a foundational 8 hours of training and allows them to work in these schools. But if you think about it, officers in the state of Arizona have a minimum of 650 hours of basic training. They have field training. They have on-the-job training that they do. And this is now affords them the opportunity when they're not working in their regular assignment to work in the schools. We just made the differentiation between a full school resource officer, that's his or her entire job, versus a school safety officer.
Okay, so they will get additional training is what I read from the press release.
Yeah, what I referred to, they'll get an additional 8 hours of training that comes specifically from the Arizona Department of Education from my team. Because if you think about it, and I spent 7 years working nights as an officer. When you work in that environment, you don't necessarily expose to the school environment. So those things that are unique to the school environment, we want to train those officers on.
Will those officers be armed?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify on that.
Yes.
So for example, an off-duty officer, where you're referring to when you mentioned that is, it almost seems as if when they're off from working their regular shift, they can come and work at the school,
Right.
which wouldn't really call for 40 hours a week, rather probably 1 to 2 days a week.
You got it.
How do they cultivate relationships if you're going to be moving the officers all around to different schools? How do they?
Yeah, they don't do as well. They're there 1 day a week probably rather than 5 days a week. And the other 4 days will be other officers there. But they will be teaching the law classes, right? And so you'll have different officers establishing relationships rather than one officer all the time. It's better if one officer establishes the relationships all the time. And we're hoping that ultimately this shortage of police officers will be solved and they can all be school resource officers. But in the meantime, at least we can provide those that will be there 1 day a week, covering all 5 days, and keep the kids safe. From a safety standpoint, it's as good. From a relationship standpoint, it's probably not as good.
What does off-duty management usually provide officers for? Is it for traffic, bars, special events?
So our typical engagement with the police department, we secure those officers to work off-duty jobs under the rules that agency allows. They will typically be movie theaters, restaurants, traffic construction zones. It varies per agency. Some agencies allow officers to work in nightclubs, some don't. So we come in and we manage those jobs under the agency's rules.
This is your first foray into education?
So this is the first agreement we will have with a state entity like the Department of Education. No one has been this foresight how to administer these grants. And sadly enough, we are seeing officer shortages around the country, and us coming in will allow more efficiency and a higher opportunity for these jobs to be filled and to be handled amongst the various agencies that will be brought to bear to fill the need here.
I know there's like baseline emergency plans at districts and schools, but if I'm understanding correctly, there is also kinds of inconsistencies, and each school is going to be a little different. So I guess how are you handling approaching, placing an officer in each school and ensuring they're aware and knowledgeable of like their specific safety plan?
Well, they have, they've already been trained as police officers, but they will get extra training from us, Mike's division, with respect to the school environment and things that are unique to that, and teaching the law-related courses.
You know,
Yes.
throughout the past, I want to say months, there's been groups that perhaps have been protesting at certain conferences saying that they're concerned about their children's safety because they feel that their kids are going to be, in a way, intimidated once they see police officers at their schools. Some have even mentioned that they're afraid their students can end up arrested after situations that shouldn't be treated as such.
Yes, I get that question a lot. That's one of the great benefits of this program. People should not be afraid of the police officers. The police officers are there to protect us. Without the police officers, we would have no civilization. It would be a war of all against all. And as the great philosopher Thomas Hobbes put it, life becomes solitary, nasty, brutish, and short if you don't have police officers to protect civilization. So it's a very bad attitude to have a negative attitude toward police officers. They make civilization possible. And the great benefit of this program is that the police officers develop relationships with the kids. And so they're no longer viewing them as the enemy in that way. They learn to trust them, which is the attitude we all should have in a civilized society. With respect to people being arrested, people who object on the basis they're afraid somebody might get arrested are in effect saying it's okay to break the law without consequence. If somebody breaks the law, there needs to be a consequence. And sometimes having a police officer there makes that possible. And in the long run, it makes it safer for everyone. If everybody knows that breaking the law has a consequence, rather than living in an environment where you can bring guns to school, you can bring drugs to school, you can do whatever you want, and there are no consequences for it.
Do you have a number as to how many vacant positions there are right now for SROs?
Yes, it's
138.
138.
Okay, so you're confident that with this new program, you'll be able to fill those?
We hope that they will. We haven't filled them all yet, but we're hoping to be able to fill them all.
I saw in the press release too, it said something about pending approval from the districts. How many are on board now, and are you seeing any resistance from any districts with the off-duty program or no?
There's certainly been no resistance. How many are all of these off-duty people?
33 have opted in already. Multiple school districts have reached out inquiring. Understandably, they have to speak with their respective school boards, but there's been no resistance.
It was mentioned, if I understood correctly, 40 hours of training for school resource officers are usually given, and then for the school safety officers, they will get 8. Obviously, training is important. Do we have any concern in the amount of difference of training from those hours?
I'll let Mike address that.
The short answer to your question is no, I don't have concerns. And that's why I addressed the foundational learning that all officers get starting at basic training in their respective academies, their field training, and what they get on the jobs. All agencies are governed by policies and procedures, and they take an oath to uphold the laws of the state of Arizona, particularly criminal law, Title 13. So I'm not concerned about that. The purpose of that additional training is, as Brian talked about, when officers go work off duty, just off duty, there's no training. They go work off duty and they're entrusted to follow the policies of the agency that they come from. So this is 8 hours on top of that, just as I said previously, to make them aware of the fact that they are there to enforce the law, as the superintendent said, not as an extension of an administrator who would want them to enforce policies. It was previously mentioned, a term that the superintendent and I often hear, concerned about a school to prison pipeline. I believe in data. I spent 17 years of my career working in South Phoenix and in Maryville, where I did not necessarily look like those I was entrusted to serve. And if you look at recent data released by the Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency and Prevention, we're at a 40-year low in arrests of juveniles, 40 years. So I think that's a false narrative that these arrests are occurring at an alarming rate. As the superintendent said, if there's a violation of law, that law is going to be enforced because officers take an oath to do so. But I think this 8 hours of training will help them to operate in that environment, and it's a benefit to all the officers.
Just overall, how many hours in total, I'm sorry, of training are they gonna get?
The school safety officers will get 8 hours.
8 hours of training.
Mike, I guess I can direct this question to you. 138 vacancies. What are you doing right now to incentivize some of those officers who may not bother, with applying? What are you doing to, wake the sheriff before them and say, you ought to be doing this,
Well, I think that's a fair question. I know some of the challenges that law enforcement is facing are generational. Recognizing that when I worked, and I said it earlier, I spent 7 years working nights, I worked a lot of off-duty at a rate that is much lower than these officers are working today. And I've heard repeatedly before I left the Phoenix Police Department, I went to a conference in New York where there were officers that had between 1 and 5 years on who talked repeatedly about a work-life balance. And we respect that work-life balance. But the question about how you incentivize it, sometimes it comes down to two things. There are those intrinsic and extrinsic values. So an officer that I would like you in this say, I'm a Phoenix resident. I was born at St. Joseph's Hospital. I raised my family here. I live here, 33 years with Phoenix PD. I would love to see Phoenix officers work in schools during the day in that same area that they work, say at night or on the weekends. But how do you motivate officers? Some people are motivated financially. So this is a very lucrative job for these officers to come work. But as I said, so that answers your question of how do we entice them? Because there's all sorts of jobs. I worked off-duty traffic. It's the middle of October and it's still over 100 degrees. I would think a school environment would be a way to entice officers to work, have the opportunity to work with superintendents and staff like you see here, to impress upon kids that there can be positive relationships between law enforcement and youth, by extension, the staff, their parents, their families. I think that is going to motivate a lot of officers to do it. But the other part of it is pay.
And let me just say, we're paying $100 an hour in the Phoenix area, slightly less in some other areas. $100 an hour, there are 2,000 hours in the year. So if you could get a full-time job at $100 an hour, that would be $200,000. So $100 an hour is very good pay, and that should serve as a good incentive.
So you've talked with police departments about this initiative, and you mentioned that the city of Phoenix is not on board with it.
That's
Can you
right,
expand
yeah.
on that?
Yeah, well, they, at the moment, they had decided not to participate, but I'm hoping they'll change their mind because people might find it strange when the people protecting the kids in a Phoenix school are, say, from Peoria. But we have to deal, we can't do it unless the police departments agree to do it, and the Phoenix Police Department has not agreed.
Did they give a reason why?
I don't know why.
Are you planning to overcome that challenge? Are you gonna be, coming together with the city?
Yeah, we've been talking with them, and I'm making it public now. That might be a bit of an incentive.
I know that obviously this program money has already been set aside.
Yeah.
Is there any concern that if school bonds and overrides are not passed, that could impact funding specifically for security and safety on campus?
Well, we are paying for this out of a specific legislative appropriation of $90 million for school safety. That includes, at the choice of the schools, either school resource officers that we've been talking about, or it can also include counselors or social workers. And we've actually funded over 500 social workers. So we're covering both sides of the school safety issue. I've urged them I think they're both important, but I personally would give priority to keeping the kids safe with school resource officers. But this is all money that was appropriated by the legislature, and we're following the legislative requirement that we leave it up to the schools as to whether they want the money to fund a school resource officer or a social worker.
Just aside from the school resource officers, are you concerned at all with some of these bonds and overrides not passing?
Yeah, well, I served 24 years on a school board, so I vote for all bond and override issues. Troy, you can count on my vote on for Paradise Valley. Because Paradise Valley has a couple of elections coming up this year.
And with these 138 vacancies, are they concentrated in any particular areas, like maybe Phoenix? Where these?
No, I think it's
where are
pretty
they?
spread out.
Pretty
Yeah.
spread out.
It's a problem for the whole state. And that's why we're also devoting effort in our career technical education program to try to channel kids into safety kinds of occupations.
Can you explain a little bit about how the pay works if it's an off-duty officer from one agency that's moving to a different city to work?
Well, they'll be paid by ODM. So, and they have, police officers in our state have jurisdiction over the whole state. So they can come from a different jurisdiction and be located in a Phoenix school and be paid by ODM.
So there are school districts that already have SROs. I know that there were school districts that did not get SROs originally. So these officers here, are they going to the schools that also have SROs already and just giving additional SROs there too?
No, there's only one SRO at a school at a time. I'm sorry, what was the rest of your question?
So school districts that already have SROs.
Oh, yes, the
not
school,
yet.
every district that requested an SRO got one. There was no district or school that requested an SRO that didn't get the funding for it. But then when they went to hire someone for which the funding was there, they found out that the police departments couldn't spare enough people to fill those positions, and that's what we're doing now. And that was a big problem. And I, again, I credit Mike with coming up with a very creative solution to it.
So both Paradise Valley and Dysart have SROs at all of their schools, or do you have?
No, they've got schools that do not have SROs. At least
Correct.
Paradise Valley, I know, has schools that doesn't. I don't know about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the contract agreement with ODM? How long, how much?
Do you want to?
Either way.
So to address the contract issues, if you understand anything about the school safety program the superintendent talked about in this appropriation, it's for a 3-year cycle. So what we didn't want to do is for those schools that opted in to say that you have to opt in for all 3 years. And I use the term opting in. So if you think of the schools, going back to the question that was asked over here, the 138 schools that were awarded an SRO, but there wasn't an officer to give. Those are the schools that we have affirmatively reached out to, ask if they want to take advantage of this opportunity. If I say opt in. They do so for this school year. At the end of the school year, as the superintendent said, and as a longtime practitioner, I would love to see there be an increase in hiring. There are more officers available for school resource officer positions. Then they can have the opportunity to fill that previously awarded position by an SRO.
Do school districts have to reach out to the ADE to get?
No, we have, they applied and we awarded, for every school that wanted an SRO, we awarded the money for it. So that's all taken care of. It's just a matter of getting then a police officer from ODM to fill a spot if the district could not get the local police department to furnish them out of the regular police department.
You mentioned this is part of a $90 million proposition.
Yeah.
Is there a name to that prop? Was it approved, just to recall? this
School
year?
safety.
School safety,
Yeah.
and that was as of this year? Or
It was, well, part of it was passed last year or 3 years ago. Part of it was passed 3 years ago. There was a renewal last year that added to the amount, and then there's about $10 million that comes from the federal government. Anybody else? If not, thank you all for coming. About this way. Sure.
They asked to have like some, but then they didn't fill all of them.
Was it?
So you know that's the vitamin I use.
Yeah, right. Of course, it's always the one we're like,